I don't know how I'm gonna get through this. I'm already tired. Okay. Do it for Gaga in the case. Do it for Gaga in the case. Hi, I'm Lizzie, and in today's episode, who do I think I am? Today we're talking about Lady Gaga's meat dress in an art historical context. Let's address the elephant in the room. We're not gonna talk about my nails. So if this is distracting to you, close your eyes.
Yeah. Close your eyes and listen.
When I was in college, one of my favorite classes was History of Fashion as Art, where we basically just studied the relationship between art, fashion, history, society, politics, and kind of how they all influence each other. It was very interesting. I remember the day that my brain really clicked about the meat dress. I was like, oh my God, Lady Gaga understands everything. Like, she is a literal genius. I always just think that she's gonna mention one particular piece whenever she brings up the meat dress or whenever it gets back into the media, and she never does. So I'm here to share my insufferable thoughts and opinions as usual. I'm gonna try and really stay on track and focus on the meat dress, but it's so hard to just focus on that one singular moment, because even though like that one dress was probably one of the most influential moments in pop culture history, it is not the most influential moment in Lady Gaga's life, and it's not the first meat art or even the first meat dress ever. So I think it all has to tie in. To me,
bitch.
To me, Lady Gaga is possibly the only mainstream icon in my lifetime who truly understands, wholly understands art. Period.
This experience with music, with songwriting, with performance art, and how I could bridge fashion and technology and pop culture into one performance and then make it commercial and translate that idea, that very theatrical idea that so many people didn't understand. How could I translate that to the whole world? And that's why I never back down, no matter how many radio people said I don't get it, no matter how many people said we're not sure that this show will play very well in the Midwest. I never back down.
Quality Culture had a really good video on Lady Gaga and explained it as Stefani Germanotta is the artist and Lady Gaga is the art, which many artists and individuals are of the mindset that artists make art, and we can view their art piece, their painting, their photograph, their sculpture objectively, and that their thoughts and feelings and lived experiences are not to be viewed in tandem with the art, and that their like personal actions and overall existence is removed from the product. Like, the art is the product that we can critique or view. Lady Gaga is one of the individuals that believes what I believe, that there is effectively no separation from art and artist. Everything artists create is influenced by society as a whole. And this is why we have art periods where artists all around the world are creating art that has very similar themes or moods or feelings or styles, because we're all influenced by the world around us, the political climate, the environmental climate, world events, and so on. And the inverse is also true. Not only are artists always influenced by the world, artists are always influencing the world. And because of this, art is never singular. Art is always influenced. And we can view work individually through critical analysis. We can critique something based on its form, its line, its shape. But in my opinion, the context of the artist's life, beliefs, experiences always has more of an influence on the art than the actual skill set, if that makes sense. All this to say, Lady Gaga makes music. She makes pop songs, but it's not just about a pop song. It is, but it's also about her performance on and off stage. It's about her music videos. It's about her interactions with fans. It's her fashion. It's her personas. It's her existence. Stephanie Joanne Angelina Germanotta was born March 28th, 1986 in New York, New York. Absolutely to be that girl. Lady Gaga was born to be famous. Like her birth chart, she was born to be famous. Stephanie always had an affinity for music. She loved anything creative. She learned to play piano at a very young age. She went to creative arts camp. She was in theater. She was always like performing. And at age 17, she attended NYU's music program and then dropped out after a year because she felt it was too restrictive. And she just wanted to perform and be in the culture, be part of it. And her parents were surprisingly supportive. She was like, I'm gonna get 6 jobs and I'm just gonna go and do it. So this phase of her life really exposed her to the club kid scene. She was performing in drag shows, drag bars, burlesque shows, punk bars, really just that underground nightlife scene. And I think that this overall aesthetic and culture and lifestyle really just influenced everything that she would do at the time and for the rest of her career in her fashion and music and art. In 2008, Lady Gaga was 21 and I was 13. Lady Gaga released her debut singles. She released Just Dance and Poker Face. The chokehold Poker Face had, I have to, hold please. Hold. Okay, this is my diary from 2008. I had to put sticky notes all over the front because it's extremely problematic. But above this beautiful life sucks, right here it says Poker Face. Inside here, I remember hearing Poker Face for the first time on the radio, and I like went home and turned on my boombox and I was like, I'm gonna learn all the words to this. Plugged my headphones into my boombox and I tried to, I waited for the song to come on the radio and I tried to write down all the lyrics as fast as humanly possible. I wonder if they're still in here. Okay, I can't find one of Poker Face, but here's my lyrical transcription of Right Round by Flo Rida. Heart this song. I was so iconic. All right, back to the story. So while I was writing in that diary, Lady Gaga released Just Dance and Poker Face, and she was not that huge at the time. She performed at Lollapalooza the year before like the singles, but was not mainstream at the time. So something she did a lot was wear repeating outfits. And she says this was because she didn't have a lot of money at the time, which could be partly true, but I think a lot of it almost worked in her benefit because it really established her brand and her look and her persona. One look that she wore all the time was like this bodysuit with a hood, which was very inspired by Grace Jones. Grace Jones was a music and pop icon of the 70s and really was at the intersection of art and fashion and melding those two worlds. That was so important back then, like Andy Warhol hanging out at Studio 54 with all the pop people. So I feel like outfits like this really established Lady Gaga's art-centric brand. Okay, I'm literally ordering DoorDash right now because I'm so hungry, but I will continue speaking because I don't quit. That's a lie. So between the release of Poker Face and up to the meat dress, Lady Gaga really established her persona as the person who wears really crazy avant-garde pieces. And people did not understand her. Like at the time, they just fully viewed her as like shock factor, just acting really crazy, which is partly true. Like all of that, since she was a newer artist, it was just getting her a lot of press and media and attention, which is half the point. But Stephanie is never unintentional. It always has a purpose and a meaning and a symbolism to it. Even when she's just like walking on the street, she's always conscious of media perception. So even like her yellow hair phase was very inspired by Liechtenstein prints and like pop art. And all of the women in these prints in this era had this bright yellow hair. And so she would wear this yellow wig or wigs all the time. And it was a nod to like the commodification and objectification of women in pop culture and media. And that women are the product. And Lady Gaga as an artist in the media is very much the product. So, Lady Gaga credits the idea of the meat dress to her former makeup artist and friend Val Garland. Val told Gaga a story about how in the 70s she wore a meat outfit to a party and she had sausages in her hair and steaks on her boobs tied together with leather string to make like a bikini top and then bacon leggings and was twirling around and blood was splattering everywhere. And Lady Gaga says,
"That's a great way to make sure that everybody leaves you alone at a party."
So since Val Garland said that she wore her own meat dress in the 70s, and the most notable meat dress in art history didn't come out until 1987. It is very possible, it's possible, that Lady Gaga's meat dress was solely inspired by Val Garland's purely original idea, and it has nothing to do with any other meat art in history. It's possible. However, when I learned about the art pieces in history that incorporate meat and like wearable art, it just had this light bulb moment for me that art and pop culture and everyday culture is just so connected all the time.
Take a look at this. Jesus.
We're gonna deep dive. We're still going. We're still going. The 2009 VMAs, the year before the meat dress, was probably the most iconic, memorable VMA year since 2003, when Madonna kissed Britney and Christina Aguilera on stage. 2009 was when Kanye interrupted Taylor Swift and did his whole Beyonce had the greatest video of all time. And it was the year that Lady Gaga performed Paparazzi and died on stage and was bleeding everywhere and propelled into the sky. 2009, Lady Gaga wore 4 or 5 different outfits. They were all so shocking and avant-garde, just really setting the precedent for VMA and red carpet fashion for years to come. So looking back at some of the pop culture moments that happened in 2010 leading up to the 2010 VMAs, you can see the foreshadowing of the meat dress. Lady Gaga even wore a meat bikini on the cover of Japan Vogue, and the reaction to it was exactly what you would expect. I'm gonna read this excerpt from Daily Mail because Ingrid Newkirk, former president of PETA, said, "Lady Gaga's job is to do outlandish things, and this certainly qualifies as outlandish, because meat is something you want to avoid putting on or in your body." Daily Mail goes on to note, Lady Gaga's habit of wearing bizarre outfits is perhaps more legendary than her chart success. Okay, so this was also a time where it was a lot more taboo to make political statements in the public eye, like on red carpets or at talk shows or events or award speeches. Now it's almost expected, and I feel like Lady Gaga, while she wasn't the first by far to make a political statement in the public eye, she really set the precedent for harnessing the power of social media and media in general. So before the red carpet, she talked to her team and they decided what they wanted to recognize. So she wasn't performing any of her songs this year at the VMAs, but in 2009, she had done such an outlandish performance. She wore so many different outfits that she knew all eyes would be on her, and she was nominated 13 times. She knew that her performance and her statement had to be through her appearance, through her dress, through her arrival. So her team came together and they decided that they really wanted to acknowledge that Congress was filing to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So short context on the Don't Ask, Don't Tell Act. This was an act put into place by the Clinton administration in 1994 that prohibited any LGBTQIA+ member of the armed forces to reveal their sexual orientation. This act specified that any LGBTQ service members who revealed their sexual orientation at the time of service would be discharged. So even if this act is repealed, LGBTQ+ service members can't have straight people privileges in the military. Like, the military is so much better if you are married. And the federal government didn't recognize same-sex marriages, so they didn't get base access for their partners. They didn't get the health care for their families. They didn't get family separation allowance or the same pay because their relationship was not recognized by the federal government. So at this time, pre-Joanne era, Lady Gaga was severely allergic to wearing just one outfit for an event. So Lady Gaga arrived to the VMAs in what she considers her best, most notable look ever. I think this look is so important to her because it's emotional for her. It has so much emotional significance for her. She showed up in this red Alexander McQueen ensemble that was from his last collection before he tragically passed away that year in January.
This is a Bosch print, and if you know anything about Bosch art, this violence and these tiny little odd things that are happening that to many are grotesque and ugly and wrong, he found beauty in these things.
There's like almost nothing I wish more in this world than that Alexander McQueen was still around to work with Lady Gaga. Like, the caliber of avant-garde dress and performance art these two could have made with a lifetime together, I can't breathe. In her arrival piece, she was accompanied by 4 LGBTQ+ service members who were discharged from the armed forces for revealing their sexuality in opposition to Don't Ask, Don't Tell. This was the first time that anyone saw her this night. This was her arrival moment. It was a very obvious display with her guests that this was her political statement. So according to Gaga, the idea came to her through Val Garland. She then routed the idea to her stylist Nicola Formichetti, who brought in visual artist Frank Fernandez, who had worked with her on the Bad Romance music video and the Monster Ball and created lots of like wearable art. Gaga's team planned this dress in a week and then constructed it literally up until the moment she wore it. Like they were sewing it on her. So the meat they used was Argentinian beef from Frank Fernandez's family butcher. He literally called them and was like,
I need the best meat to make a dress.
So they received 50 pounds of beef, which seems to be the standard amount you need to make a dress out of meat. And apparently this cut was very clean and sturdy and didn't drip. So there was no pattern for the dress, but they did have a corset with straps that they constructed the dress onto, and the corset went to like her waist, and they put the corset onto a mannequin and then sewed the beef to the corset. They would work on it for short spurts of time and then take it off the mannequin, and then they would put it into a cooler and let it cool down and then bring it back out to continue working on it. The dress, alongside all the other ingredients for like the shoes and the bag, were transported to the venue in coolers. Her team specifically requested a changing room with minimal furniture. And once they arrived at the venue, they hung the dress in the bathroom, like a cooled bathroom, until it was time for her to change. She changed between the Alexander McQueen dress into like a black latex Armani Privé dress. So pretty. I think the Glee cast in the background. Just before the final award was announced, the Video of the Year award, she was the first woman to ever be nominated twice for this award. So her team took everything out of the coolers, took the stuff out of the bathroom, they held the dress up overhead, and then she kind of just like scooped into it and they fitted it around her. Then she stepped into the boots, which were just white pleaser boots, and then Frank started cutting apart the remaining ingredients and wrapping them around the boots with butcher twine. They took her hair down from the updo that it was in. She wore the same wig all night, probably just to save time, and then fastened a chunk of meat to her head as like a beret. It mostly just baffles me that she was able to undress from her like latex ball gown, get into the meat dress, fully accessorize in time, and there was only one meat dress. There was one shot, one time, one opportunity. Frank Fernandez even said that they didn't have time for a fitting. Like the only time she had it on was at the VMAs. And he said that he didn't even realize until he saw it on the monitor, like what an impact it would have. The VMA producers definitely did not know she was changing into this. I love the backstage clips from MTV.
Saw these coolers being brought in and realized that the reason that they needed the space was to house all of these coolers.
I'm getting called that she needs to be in her seat. They give her kind of a 2-minute heads up. The door opens up. I see she's wearing a red dress, a matching red hairpiece, matching purse, matching shoes. I start to notice people staring a little bit harder than they normally would.
I was literally like this close to her. Just remember looking at it and just wondering, is that really?
And then I start looking at her dress and notice that it's not really a normal type of fabric. And I'm trying to pay attention to see what the white swirls are. And then it clicks that the ice chest was what was keeping the dress fresh.
Thank God Lady Gaga won and got to go on stage in her meat dress. She accepted the award on stage and announced the name of her upcoming album, Born This Way.
I promised if I won this tonight, I'd announce the name of my new record. It's called Born This Way.
And the crowd reaction was, I love this photo.
When do we have to stop this charade?
Okay, I'm starving, so this is turning into a mukbang. Okay, so media outlets have been trying to translate the meat dress literally since the day it happened. And the media always speculates that it's about aging or feminism or anti-meat or veganism or consumerism, which could literally all be true. The girls who get it, and the girls who don't. And the girls who don't get it are the vegans. I'm sorry. One meat dress made of meat that was already at the butcher shop is not going to start like a new wave of meat fashion and mass consumption of meat as clothing. I'm sorry. It's just not. But the wave of criticism that confuses me the most is the questioning of its originality. Two media individuals speculated that they thought that the dress was derived from a 2009 Mark Ryden painting called Incarnation. It's essentially just a painting of a girl wearing a meat dress. Ryden himself has said that he is upset that Gaga never mentions him. Mr. Ryden, I am sorry, I hate to break it to you. Your work is far from the first to incorporate meat as a medium. Art history lesson time. So back in the day, 1500s, 1600s day, people's main hobbies were gardening, having kids, raising kids. More intellectual people would paint and catch syphilis was the main hobby. But a lot of people spent time painting or learning how to paint, especially the rich people. And very often they honed their craft and learned their skills by painting still lifes. And because of this, there's a lot of paintings of hanging meat. So on one hand, this was just a really good way to gain an understanding of painting still lifes and gaining an understanding of anatomy. And it also just set the precedent of meat and other perishable goods being a symbol in art of life's impermanence. As humans, especially moody artists, humans have an interest in the juxtaposition and meaning between life and death, morality and mortality and time and the duality of man and all that. And there's a very popular theme in art in the 16th and 17th century called Vanitas, or memento mori. A Vanitas is a symbolic work of art showing the futility of pleasure, the certainty of death. So this will usually look something like a still life of beautiful florals and books symbolizing knowledge and life and learning and growth, and then a human skull in the middle. Or a bowl of beautiful ripe fruit showing fertility and life and birth, and then you look closer and there's bugs in the middle showing decay and dying and impermanence and rotting. So this symbolism of organic materials in art is so well known in art history that Lady Gaga's interpretation of her meat dress just feels disjointed or misinterpreted. And it makes sense. Her explanation makes sense when she talks about it, but I just want it to be a statement on life and mortality and aging. That's what I want it to be.
Am I the drama? I don't think I'm a drama.
And maybe it is. In the post-VMA interview with Ellen, she said that the dress has many interpretations. So I think in order to timelessly interpret Lady Gaga's dress for more than just a political movement of the 2010s, we have to look at meat in art history. If we're going to talk about meat art, we have to talk about Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon is an artist from the 50s whose work is concerning. I can't describe his work better than the Wikipedia explanation, so I'm going to read it. His work is described as permeated by anguished visions of humanity. Francis Bacon's paintings embody the existential ethos of the post-war era. In his powerful, nihilistic works, tormented and deformed figures become players in the dark, unresolved dramas. Men are so perturbed. So he has this really fun and funky piece called Figure with Meat. So remember when I said people were really bored in the 1600s and painting a lot of meat? One of those very bored people was Rembrandt. Francis Bacon used two reference paintings to make his Figure with Meat. He used a notable painting by Diego Velázquez and Rembrandt's Slaughtered Ox and put them together to create his masterpiece. This combination of imagery is textbook Vanitas vibes. The Pope symbolizes purity and goodness and godliness, and then the slaughtered ox represents death and decay and ending and mortality. This piece is also a great example of how art inspires art. Rembrandt took two notable paintings as references and used them to inspire his own art. Pretty much all art is derivative of other art. Mark Ryden. In the 1960s, performance art really started to ramp up, and I think this is in large part due to just a more open dialect on political critique, socio-political critique, economical critique, political statements, Lady Gaga, and just the accessibility of video equipment. The two main artists leading the performance art movement were definitely Carly Schneemann and Marina Abramovich. Two women leading an art movement.
It's my girl.
Okay.
In 1964, Carly Schneemann performed Meat Joy, which was probably her most notable performance piece. Her kinetic theater concept was that performers engage in scripted and non-scripted movement as a temporary performance piece, and then the recording of that performance was then turned into a new form of art set to music. Also very notable in this kinetic theater was the use of seemingly unrelated or strange objects. And Meat Joy had lots of poultry and fish and raw meat. In Meat Joy, 8 performers, including Carly Schneemann herself, performed. They were covered in paint, rolling around with like paintbrushes and meat, and they were interacting with each other in interesting or strange ways, or they had interesting scripted movements like rocking in fetal position and sucking their thumb. And the established symbolism of fish and meat and perishable items in tandem with essentially nude people rolling all over each other, making out with fish smashed between them in front of onlookers, it's meant to make people question their perception or immediate reaction to something that they think is taboo, to their immediate perception of sex and bodies and movement and sexuality and youth and connection and touch. It's made to make us think of what do we consider taboo and why. Now think of Lady Gaga's meat dress. Why does it make us so uncomfortable? Why do people hate it? Does it make us uncomfortable because we're thinking of the meat touching her bare skin? Are we thinking then of her bare skin? Are we sexualizing it? Are we sexualizing her? Are we objectifying her? Are we thinking of her and the meat as an object?
I am not a piece of meat.
Now, the piece that really made Lady Gaga's meat dress click for me in an artistic context was Hannah Sturbeck's 1987 piece, Vanitas, a flesh dress for an albino anorectic. The flesh dress is made of 50 pounds, sound familiar? 50 pounds of raw flank steaks sewn together and hung on a dress form. It's typically displayed with this photo of a woman wearing the dress beside the hanging physical piece. In the artist statement, Sturbeck says the work is a statement on vanity and bodily decomposition. This really stood out to me as something that would resonate with Hollywood and celebrity culture. Not only does this piece convey a temporary nature by using an actively decomposing material, the piece has to be deconstructed and reconstructed every time it's shown. When it's on display, the piece in itself is an inanimate object, but it's performing. So the piece starts out as like a raw, fresh, hanging, bloody piece of meat. And then over time, the meat dries out and decomposes, and it kind of loses its red color, and it shrinks around the dress form and really just withers away. And in this way, the dress itself is an albino anorectic. It starts out like full and pink and red and full of life, and then just slowly starts to decompose. To me, this piece is a spot-on take on beauty standards, societal norms, societal pressures, celebrity culture, and just so much of Lady Gaga's life in Hollywood, in the public eye. So to me, Lady Gaga's Alexander McQueen look, accompanied by the service members discharged from the military, is the statement on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And the meat dress is the statement on Lady Gaga being there in the public eye to make that statement in the first place. Hannah Sturbeck's meat dress was last shown in 2011, most likely because of the stir and attention to meat art because of Lady Gaga's meat dress the year prior. To my knowledge, some iterations of this piece are discarded because it needs to be made anew each time it's shown, and some of them still exist in their very dried out, jerky form. Lady Gaga intended for her dress to decompose at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She was going to send it there to decompose as part of the continued performance. But the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame commissioned a taxidermist $6,000 to preserve the dress. Sergio Vigilato is the one who took the dress to preserve it, and it was frozen upon arrival. He said that when he thawed it out, it started to emit an odor. Very punk, very rock and roll. He said that it took 3 months of work to bleach the dress and preserve it with formaldehyde, and that the fatty pieces of the meat can't be preserved, so he removed the fatty pieces and replaced it with white rubber to like recreate that marbled texture. Then he dyed it red so it would look as close to how it looked when Lady Gaga wore it. He said that he's not pleased with the work and he could have done it a lot better, but allegedly this is what Lady Gaga's team wanted, which is interesting because they wanted it to decompose in the first place. So like, Who's telling the truth? In 2020, Lady Gaga wore a recreation of the meat dress in her voting advocacy video. It was recreated once again by Frank Fernandez, who created it the original time, and she wore it to call attention to voter registration and turnout in the 2020 election. So once again, she's using the dress and many of her iconic looks to make a political statement. Aside from being one of the most, if not the most, iconic pop culture moment in the past 20 years, if anything were to come of the meat dress, it's the idea of using the red carpet and the public eye to make political statements. And by no means is Lady Gaga the first person to ever make a political statement in the public eye. Cher, who was standing right next to Lady Gaga when she accepted her award, was making political statements all throughout her career through dress. In years to come, we saw so many celebrities making statements both on stage and on the red carpet in support and protest of many social political issues, and at this point it's almost expected. The meat dress has been widely considered one of the most influential pop culture moments in the past few decades, and maybe it will always be up for interpretation, but if Gaga did anything right, she always gets us talking. This is by far one of my most favorite topics I'll ever talk about, and it's kind of just the perfect blend of art history and pop culture, and I definitely want to do more deep dives on things like this. If you have any more, I'm in my BuzzFeed era. Tell me in the comments below what you want to hear me talk about. Also, pray for editing, Lizzie, because, oh my god. Yeah, love you.
With all of it.
Once? Hey, how about this one? What did you...